In research and statistics, population and sampling are fundamental concepts used to collect and analyze data effectively. The population refers to the entire group of individuals, objects, or events that you are interested in studying or drawing conclusions about. The population can be finite, such as all students in a school, or infinite, like all possible outcomes of flipping a coin. It is defined based on the study's purpose, which could include all adults in a country, all employees in a company, or all species in a habitat. Populations can be heterogeneous, meaning diverse, or homogeneous, meaning similar. For example, a study on the effectiveness of a new drug might target the population of all individuals suffering from a specific disease. A sample is a subset of the population selected for the study. Researchers use a sample because it is often impractical or impossible to study the entire population due to time, cost, or logistical constraints. A good sample should reflect the characteristics of the population to ensure valid and generalizable conclusions. The size of the sample depends on the study's goals, budget, and desired accuracy. For instance, small studies may require 50 to 100 participants, while large-scale studies might need thousands. There are two main categories of sampling: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. In probability sampling, every individual in the population has a known, non-zero chance of being selected, making it more likely to produce a representative sample. This includes methods like simple random sampling, where every member has an equal chance of being selected, stratified sampling, where the population is divided into subgroups and random samples are taken from each stratum, systematic sampling, which involves selecting every nth individual from a list, and cluster sampling, where the population is divided into clusters and some clusters are randomly chosen for study. In non-probability sampling, not every individual has a chance of being selected, and the sample may not fully represent the population. This includes convenience sampling, where individuals who are easiest to access are selected, judgmental sampling, which relies on the researcher's judgment to choose participants, quota sampling, ensuring specific subgroups are represented based on predetermined quotas, and snowball sampling, where participants recruit others, often used in hard-to-reach populations. The sample acts as a bridge to make inferences about the population. By studying the sample, researchers can estimate population parameters, test hypotheses about the population, and identify patterns or trends within the group. Sampling plays a crucial role in research by reducing costs and time, allowing researchers to study populations that are too large or inaccessible, and ensuring ethical and manageable data collection. Mixed research integrates qualitative and quantitative methods, requiring careful selection of sampling techniques to align with both approaches. Common techniques include concurrent sampling, which involves collecting data for both methods simultaneously, and sequential sampling, where one type of data is collected before the other. Mixed research often uses purposeful sampling to select participants with specific characteristics for qualitative data, while employing probability sampling for quantitative data to ensure representativeness. A blended approach, such as stratified purposeful sampling, can combine these techniques by dividing the population into subgroups and selecting participants for both qualitative depth and quantitative generalizability. In concurrent sampling, data for both qualitative and quantitative components are collected simultaneously, often using the same participants. This approach saves time and ensures consistency between the two data sets. It is particularly useful when the study explores the same phenomenon from complementary perspectives. For example, a study on workplace productivity might administer a survey and conduct focus group interviews with the same group of employees at the same time. The survey measures productivity scores, while the interviews explore perceptions of workplace culture, providing an integrated view of the research problem. In sequential sampling, data collection occurs in phases. Typically, the results of one method inform the design of the next. For example, qualitative insights might shape a quantitative survey, or quantitative findings might guide in-depth qualitative exploration. A researcher studying student stress might start by conducting interviews with a small group of students to identify stress factors. Based on these themes, they design a questionnaire to survey a larger student population and assess how common these factors are. Stratified purposeful sampling combines stratified sampling and purposeful sampling by dividing the population into meaningful subgroups and selecting participants purposefully from each group. This approach ensures diversity and relevance while allowing for qualitative depth and quantitative breadth. For instance, a mixed-method study on healthcare satisfaction might divide patients into strata based on age groups. Researchers would purposefully select a small number of participants from each group for interviews and use a survey to quantitatively measure satisfaction levels across all strata, ensuring both depth and generalizability. In embedded sampling, one type of data collection, qualitative or quantitative, is dominant, and the other is embedded to enhance or validate the findings. For example, a qualitative study might embed a small quantitative component to measure certain variables, or vice versa. In a study examining teacher effectiveness, the primary focus is qualitative, involving classroom observations and teacher interviews. Embedded within this, a quantitative survey measures student test scores to assess academic outcomes. The quantitative data provides a numerical context to support the qualitative findings. Multistage sampling involves selecting samples in multiple stages, combining different sampling techniques. For example, researchers might first use cluster sampling to choose groups and then use purposeful or random sampling within those clusters for more detailed data collection. A study on rural healthcare accessibility first uses cluster sampling to select specific rural regions. Within each selected region, researchers conduct qualitative interviews with healthcare providers and use systematic random sampling to select patients for a survey about their experiences. Extreme case sampling focuses on individuals or cases that are unusual or significantly different from the norm. This technique provides insights into the outliers and helps understand edge case scenarios, enriching the research. A mixed-method study on student performance identifies students who scored exceptionally high and low on a standardized test. Researchers conduct interviews with these students to understand their unique experiences and challenges while using their test scores for statistical comparisons. Mixed stratified random sampling integrates stratified sampling, dividing the population into strata, with mixed sampling, ensuring that qualitative and quantitative data are collected systematically across subgroups. A mixed-method study on customer satisfaction divides customers by demographics. Random samples are drawn from each stratum for quantitative surveys, while purposeful sampling is used to select a few individuals from each subgroup for in-depth qualitative interviews. In sequential explanatory sampling, quantitative data is collected and analyzed first, followed by qualitative data collection to explain or elaborate on the quantitative findings. A researcher surveys employees about their job satisfaction levels and identifies a trend of low satisfaction in a particular department. To understand the underlying reasons, they conduct focus groups with employees from that department, exploring workplace issues in depth. In sequential exploratory sampling, qualitative data is collected first to identify themes or variables, and then quantitative data collection is used to test or generalize those findings. A study on mental health begins with interviews to uncover common stressors among students. These insights inform the design of a survey distributed to a larger student population, quantifying how widespread the identified stressors are. In parallel mixed sampling, different sampling techniques are used simultaneously for qualitative and quantitative components. Each component may target different subsets of the population, ensuring both broad and deep coverage. A study on customer loyalty uses a stratified random sample for quantitative surveys measuring loyalty scores. Simultaneously, purposeful sampling selects long-term customers for interviews to explore the factors influencing their loyalty. Maximum variation sampling intentionally selects participants who represent a wide range of characteristics or experiences within the population. This approach ensures the inclusion of diverse perspectives for a deeper understanding of the phenomenon being studied. A mixed-method study on housing satisfaction includes participants from various income levels, ethnic backgrounds, and housing types. Surveys measure satisfaction levels across these groups, while interviews explore why satisfaction varies among them. Homogeneous sampling focuses on participants who share specific traits or characteristics. This method is useful when the goal is to delve deeply into a particular subgroup or phenomenon. A study on stress management techniques selects college students who all participate in yoga classes. Researchers distribute a survey to measure stress reduction levels and conduct interviews to explore personal experiences with yoga as a stress relief method. Common in grounded theory research, theoretical sampling selects participants based on their potential to contribute to the development of a theory. Data collection continues until theoretical saturation is achieved, meaning no new insights emerge. A study on workplace innovation starts by surveying employees across industries to identify patterns in innovative behaviors. Based on emerging patterns, researchers conduct interviews with employees in particularly innovative workplaces to refine their understanding and develop a theory. Critical case sampling identifies participants or cases that are particularly important or illustrative of the research question. These cases are often used to test hypotheses or illustrate a principle. A mixed method study on disaster response selects a region that experienced an exceptionally severe natural disaster. Researchers survey residents to assess their preparedness and conduct interviews with emergency responders to understand the challenges they faced. Opportunistic sampling, also called emergent sampling, involves selecting participants as opportunities arise during the research process. This approach is often used in dynamic, evolving studies. While conducting a survey on community health, researchers encounter a group of healthcare volunteers. They decide to include this group in their qualitative interviews to gain additional insights into the role of volunteerism in health promotion. This technique uses cluster sampling for broad quantitative data collection and embeds qualitative sampling within selected clusters to explore specific issues. A study on rural education selects entire schools to survey teachers and students. Within selected schools, purposeful sampling identifies teachers for interviews to explore challenges in teaching under-resourced environments. In nested sampling, one sample is a subset of another. For example, a qualitative sample is drawn from participants in the quantitative component of the study, allowing direct comparison between the two data sets. In a study on parental involvement in education, researchers distribute a survey to 500 parents. From this group, they select 20 parents with varying involvement levels for interviews to explore their motivations and barriers. Intensity sampling selects cases that strongly exhibit the phenomenon of interest but are not extreme. It focuses on participants who can provide rich, detailed data without being outliers. A study on employee burnout surveys a large organization and identifies employees with moderate to high burnout levels. Researchers then conduct interviews with a subset of these employees to understand contributing factors. Transformative sampling is used in research focused on marginalized or underrepresented groups. The sampling is designed to empower participants and ensure their voices are heard. A mixed method study on access to education for disabled students includes a quantitative survey to measure access disparities. Purposeful sampling ensures that disabled students are also interviewed to highlight their unique challenges and experiences. Quota sampling sets predetermined quotas for subgroups within the population to ensure adequate representation. This technique can be combined with both qualitative and quantitative approaches. A study on political attitudes sets quotas for age groups, ensuring that young, middle-aged, and older adults are equally represented. Surveys capture overall attitudes, while interviews explore why views differ among age groups.